G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff. Wow. A hot topic every day, in every way, is feminism. DEI hires, celebrated, but of course this is just call someone a DEI hire, they sour on you, because they know the meaning. They know they did not earn it. But women, the feminist revolution would be nowhere without the mass media industrial complex. It is feminism. Feminism is communism in drag. It is nothing about the ongoing and continued exploitation of man to turn everything transactional, to tax you for everything, to make sure that they can wring every last cent out of you. They do not want you to get ahead. Now, everybody knows The Guardian is crap, but women now want to be paid for taking care of themselves. So women who are already less productive, right, so complaining about their menstrual cycles, I'm surprised they don't go and spoon it out, spray it all over the office. They're that sick. They're obsessed with their menstruation cycles, right? They're obsessed with how much they earn, right? They already earn less money because they work less, and now what? They want more paid holidays. Man, talk about didn't earn it, right? Of course. It's those who are hitting the wall, the eggless, whining about their cycles, And of course, it's a conspiracy. Everything's a conspiracy. About the right to sex is a conspiracy. You're just an incel. You're just a male supremacist terrorist. You don't want to even read this article. But basically, a woman took ideas from a male who went on a spree killing, and she leveraged these ideas to get herself into a Rhodes Scholarship, $1 million prize, lots of acclaim, didn't earn it. And now she's written a book called The Right to Sex. She wants, of course, it's about control. And the ultimate control, of course, is control my body. See, it's always about control, right? They're talking about unwanted pain. That sex has to be a free and consensual transaction for both parties and free of unwanted burdens. Basically, she's a pro-abortionist. But she's actually an advocate for prostitution. Because she goes into lost time, lost income, lost pride, hurt feelings, emotional abuse, all the, And our sex only helps the patriarchy. But that's what they do. Feminism is asymmetric warfare against you. It's propaganda. It is asymmetric warfare. If you're not fighting it, right, you are, you're losing your rights. So, yeah, I'm an anti-feminist because I'm pro-rights. I don't think you have the right to, I think you don't have the right just to take what you want. But the problem is, right, so many people don't understand. Thou shalt not steal is not just about taking your neighbour's property, right? It's about taking from others. And feminism is theft. It's about taking from others. Whether it's, you earn more than me, so you owe me money. That's theft. That is plain, upright, grinding people down. Because, let's face it, in a real world situation, right, real men, right, would win every argument, because you get sick of them, you say no, and then it's clock out. Koreans have it made. I look at the 4B movement, of course, and see that there are a lot of MGTOW who pretty much want the same thing. That's your right if it's a free decision that you made and not one forced upon you by society. And I warn you that they want to force this on you. The prostitution is illegal in China, yet, like so many countries in the world, prostitution is widespread. Now, it's not just your typical brothel or sex club or women on a street corner. Prostitution is in everything in China. And it is a window into the future of the West if we continue electing people like Mandami and other hypocrites who want to feel superior by reducing everybody else into mud mixing, flesh consuming, mindless morons. Now, China, of course, has inconsistent policing on every law, right? State police are so busy monitoring dissidents that they have no time for real crimes. Often prostitutes are agents of the state. And often the scope and operations of prostitution is so organized. You have hair salons, massage parlors. You have... these are spread throughout the West, right? They actually grow in China. They test the models in China. And then they export it around the world. And actually, believe it or not, it didn't start in China. It started in Thailand and spread. Thailand was the center of the sex industry and sex trafficking. Now, the sex industry in China is linked to human trafficking of women, particularly from North Korea, Vietnam, and Pakistan. But you know where the most women are trafficked, women and children are trafficked, over 100,000 a year? Ukraine. Now, health and safety, it's not just HIV, it's prostitution en masse always leads to degradation. There is something that you fundamentally burn out, not just over physical exertion, but mental exhaustion, and your health, and your the health of your sex organs is linked to the health of your liver. The health of your liver is linked to the health of your heart, and the health of your heart is linked to the health of your brain. You actually have, right, these 7 key centers, and this is where chakras come in. I think chakras and these ki and chi and all these things are leftovers from better, bigger civilizations that existed before us that collapsed because of the rise of feminism, and we're seeing it again. Every ancient civilization warns against putting women into positions of any power over man. But China technically does not have a patriarchy or a matriarchy, although the 10,000 elites who rule China are men. They are at the mercy of their women and their families and their complex web of deception and backstabbing and cliques and cliches and clubs. And one of the biggest, of course, is the nightclub industry, where, of course, politicians and bureaucrats and business leaders go to mix with youthful women right? Most of the male customers are over 45. Most of the females are walled out at 25, although they say 35, 45. No, it's women are forced very young into prostitution in China. It's a way of entrapment, right? Particularly abusing the fact that Asians, it's very hard to tell their age between, let's face it, 15 to 50. They could be one and the same until they age out. There's always with women, there's the wall, the biological wall. They hit that before, but their beauty wall lasts longer. But they keep saying that it's driven by young consumers. That's a lie. Most of the statistics out of China are lies. But the market peaked around 15.6 billion in 24. That's the legal market. They reckon the illegal market for venues across China is way more than that. Most of the youth who go to this are women. That's why they say it's youth by young consumers, not by young men, right? Young women drive the industry. They lure in the men with means and money. Most young men can't afford the cover charge to these nightclubs because they charge a week's wages to get in. Now, these venues were big, particularly in tourist areas. They featured live house music. They had their own subcultures and their own state, what they call the domesticated clubbing. That is, they had a volume limit. They had a lighting limit. They had everything in a controlled environment where men could sit down and order meals, get pampered, taken to private rooms for massages and sex. They would have strict monitoring of the women's health. Anybody who showed up with a disease, on their record was immediately excluded from the party. The party exclusion meant you couldn't go to nightclubs, you couldn't travel on transport and that. So a lot of people, particularly in China, it was also a huge sin to get a prostitute pregnant. So, this is what I'm warning you about, though, right? I'm not warning you because, China, I'm warning you that China is like a petri dish. But the night owls and the nightclub and the disconnect scene and the disconnect dancer is all a facade. And the West has been living with this veil over their eyes for a long time too. Most of the girls in a nightclub are there to reach into your wallet. But in China, it has become a profession. One that is managed and controlled by the state. From bar servers, Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, hostesses, hostess clubs. You see this all across Asia, where women, particularly married women, engage in hostessing. Of course, they do more than drinks. Now, these hostess clubs, they love targeting married women, and this is the opposite of the industry, where hostesses are there to lure in rich young men, offering the fantasy of a MILF. But there are many, many different subcultures here. We're talking over 240 different fetish clubs just in Tokyo, all operating on the edge of legality. Now, the go-go dancers, this goes back to Germany in the 1930s, where women would dance for customers. They in VIP rooms. These were visual entertainment for patrons. They were various skilled dancers, often professionals trained by the state. They would target customers to spend more. Remember, everything is about getting you to part with your money. Now, bottle girls, these are the girls that go around, once upon a time, they would be in restaurants, nightclubs, hotels, anywhere there's alcohol, there'd be a girl and I literally mean a girl, who would bring you a bottle, and these would be, you bought the bottle, you bought the girl. But some of these range from hundreds of thousands of dollars. They earn their income through tips, right? Now, you know the origin of tip? Do you really know the origin of tip? It means just the tip. Use your imagination and you'll figure it out very quickly, right? Now, there was a club in the 1950s. It was where presidents and media used to hang out in Hollywood, and this was gave rise to celebrity influencing and gangsters, and then often, right, gangsters, politicians would have what they would call moles, M-O-L-E-S, mole girls. Now, one of the most prominent mole girls was a East German spy who was in relationship with the Kennedys. She was caught with nuclear secrets and was let loose after, and a week later, Kennedy was dead. But this has happened in China recently as well, where a general in charge of nuclear security was caught in a betting scandal by Pakistanis, and they were getting Chinese nuclear secrets out of him to bolster Pakistan. And his weakness was betting on German football and bottle girls. And Pakistan is one of the big suppliers of bottle girls to China and the world. This is all spreading under the guise of feminism. Strippers and exotic dancers, they have pole dancing clubs all across America now. Women are learning pole dancing, strip teasing, they belly dancing, lap dancing. There's a new growing phenomenon now called yoga pants sex, where they rub them up against you wearing yoga pants to get you off. Apparently, a lot of strip clubs are closing because they're at the higher end. Everything at the higher end is not really closing. It's going private clubs back into the the Hollywood Hills, the big mansion on the hill that nobody will speak about and talk about, where people walk out of their houses up the hill to, and all the wives, go as soon as the husband's left. Oh, pool boy, I need the pool cleaned. Yes, it's definitely her clears a bloody pool, right? But this is the where society collapses, right? I'm not against degeneracy. I think that there's always that little bit of mix. But what we're seeing now is organized feminism and a conspiracy against men growing and publicly growing, where women are using their sex and sexuality to exploit men on an unprecedented scale, to pretty much transfer all your wealth via the state, right? You think about all these divorces, how it's seen a rise in state revenue. It's mostly at the state level, not the federal level from what goes to governments. You look at the judges and how courts are clogged every day with these cases that should be dissolved easily. Most divorces don't need a divorce lawyer. This is an industry though, and they create the seeds of your destruction in these clubs. They exploit you sexually to get you to watch certain TV shows. They exploit you sexually to push the LGBTQ agenda. They'll never tell you, the truth about the bottle girls. They'll never tell you the truth about the discotheque dancers. Don't forget, they also exploit women, right? Who better to exploit women than other women? Most of your madams, you go throughout history, most of your madams have been the wives of rich men, right? Most of the wives of rich men were prostitutes. This used to be a dirty secret, right? A lot of the French, the aristocrats, they used to have women auctions. There were women auctions throughout North Africa. Kidnapping of white women still goes on today. And no matter how much we warn women that feminism is a slogan, right? And slogans are dangerous, particularly to young people, because they don't think, right? Slogans put them under emotional pressure, and under emotional pressure, you do not use logic. And so women get lured into OnlyFans thinking that, it's just sex, it's just a tip, right? They don't understand your body, your joints, everything in this world has what's called a technical limit. Now, when you work out the technical limit, you can say, right, if I build a car a certain way, I know that 99% of them are going to last 10 years. So I can give a 10-year guarantee because my obligations are going to be next to nothing compared to if I gave a 20-year guarantee. Now, once upon a time, you bought a car, it would last you between 20 and 50 years. But they planned obsolescence. They chose weaker materials. They deliberately changed the processing on leather so that it would rot and decay eventually, because even though the preservation agent was so-called less toxic, it was also, that meant bacteria would eventually rise, but no, the leather was softer and kinder on the skin, allegedly. Now, so much comes down to female pleasure and leisure, right? This is the nightclub industry, female pleasure and leisure is another reason why women are less productive, right? They only earn enough to get to that 9 to 5, and then they're out the door and they're not home. They're in nightclubs. This is how they get their free meals, their free drinks. They're draining you of everything, right? Now, I heard recently, you see this on Tinder, no broke boys, 666, 6-inch dick, 6 foot tall, 6-inch dick, and a 6-inch wad of cash, but the thing is, 6-figure cash income, that's all they're really interested in. I bet you, I've seen it. There used to be a guy on YouTube, the Gold Digger. Do you remember in the early days of YouTube, the yellow Ferrari? He'd drive around Canada and park his car near clubs and have women, and women would come over, and he'd be standing on the other side of the road. They'd be admiring the car, and he says, "Nice car." And he says, I've got a boyfriend. And he says, "That's my car." And she puts his arm around him, and then he takes her to the car and hands her a gold shovel, and she'd slap him and run off, right? He got charged with a sexual assault eventually, I believe. Of course. But that's the exploitation of men, right? In a nutshell. In that men are geared, but not homosexual men, not gay men, not black men, not yellow man, not brown man, not black man, not orange man. Men are geared to get it up and get it on. Now, men are not as animalistic or as emotionally driven as women. So men can get up, go to work for weeks, months, years at a time before they eventually get sick and tired of the dull relationship they're in. Because really, right, you think about it, right? If you're not what is the point of a relationship when she has nothing to say? She's only interested in her dramas. She's only interested in her friends' periods. You know, she's only interested in taking a hot bath with a dildo, you know, and drinking wine. You know, they offer nothing. You know, women knew, right, the social contract. You provided a house, you ran the house for his benefit, you gave sex a few times a week, and you pretty much kept track of everything. So, you know, you'd have your 3 kids, you know, you didn't have any unwanted pregnancies. Things were fine. But that's the problem, isn't it? They got bored. So they started exploiting men for that thrill. Now, I don't know how, this is how evil exists, isn't it? That everybody has the potential, right? Deliver us from temptation. But here's the thing. Women, again, because temptation is an emotion, it is a thrill, a excitement to have something that is different. But this is the problem. Once degeneracy becomes the norm, people get bored again. This is when degeneracy gets worse and worse. And we saw the excesses of degeneracy and its backlash in Germany in 1933, in Russia in 1917. We saw this in China, multiple periods of history in China. China had the longest history of war. This is why I'm doing China, by the way, because they had the longest history of war, the longest history of prostitution, the longest history of various types of societies, not just the imperial government. They've had almost every system known to man at any one time in their history. And they are the closest to what we can look at as the petri dish for the world, for what's coming for the rest of us if we do not wake up to the collectivism. Because it always becomes a degeneracy, right? Once the elites have no challenge, they start inventing challenges. Now, the problem is, and I think a lot of people understand this, that feminism is not just about women. It is gynocentrist superiority. It is often men who worship the high heel, the stockinged leg, the curved genitalia, the subtle smell of a woman. Though what you're actually smelling is a combination of their urine, salt, and feces, but never mind that, right? You have to be a biologist to understand sweat, and then once you understand sweat, you ain't gonna lick that. But this is the problem, right? They call it the scent of a woman or the taste of a woman. You know, they all have their fetish. Some of it is a curled hair, you know, or a soft touch of the hand. You know, some guys can't, you know, get off unless they're stroked by a woman. Some guys can't get off unless they have mother's milk. You know, there are many fetishes in this world. And I think ultimately, whether or not you believe in the right to sex or the right to prostitution or whatever, I think we all can agree that feminism is cancer, and that it is a cancer to exploit women. And it is increasingly obvious that a group of rich men and women are bored, and they are bullying society using their power of the media and these institutions which have infested using DEI. Now, as Korea breaks down and as more and more jobs are lost, primarily women, Society seems to be normalizing very quickly, and Japan is looking to mirror this, and so is China. So again, this is why I cover those particular topics and areas, because what's happening in America now is just transitional. We don't know how long the Trump effect will last, what the Vance effect would look like if Vance gets in, or even if Vance gets in, or what the Democrats plan to do. But I think you have to be forewarned and know probably everything the Democrats plan, and why they talk so much about Tim Walz, is that, and Gavin Newsom and some dummy, is that they plan to instigate everything they've instigated in China. That means more nightclubs. That means more emphasis on youth culture, beauty, which means doubling down, destroying woke. No, woke is not defeated. Woke was just an experiment. It failed. They move on. They're not defeated. They're just changing tactics. And we're seeing those tactics rising now in China in 2025 with the rise of the old ways, right? The tried and true methods of controlling men through promiscuous young women. So we're going to see college girls go wild. We're going to see more young female presenters on TV. We're going to see aged out Kathleen Kennedy fired, replaced by a younger, more dynamic woman, probably of colour, probably an Indian. They will get rid of Daisy Ridley, replace her with a woman of colour. They're going to start pushing Afro-beautyism. This is the worship of black women. This is not new. This has been done throughout society and history as well. It was once upon a time that black women were a status symbol in China, and also the courts of the Kublai Khan, throughout Iran all the way through to North Africa. Black women were considered like a rose garden, and they'd have white female slaves to tend to these black women. Every degeneracy has existed before, so we can look back and examine the results, and we can see double down on stupidity is a common tactic, right? If they lose, they don't stop. They always change. It's always a battle. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Forewarned is forearmed. So how you act, of course, is to go your own way. You could, which includes, I think, the right to be married, the right to have a girlfriend, to go in, eyes wide open. Know your state laws. Know your marriage laws. Plan your exit. Plan your defense. Any woman who doesn't sign a prenup is a red flag. Any woman who does not save lingerie for the bedroom, any woman who has more than 3 friends, any woman with a second phone, there's a lot of red flags, and we should start getting into those as well soon. Thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. Thanks each and every one of you. You can scan the QR code for my link tree. Otherwise, take care. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.